We're back in the win column, folks. What an emotional, important victory for the Aggies. I don't know about you guys, but this last week has felt like it was in slow motion. It was one of the most brutal and embarrassing, uneasy weeks of being an Aggie fan since Jimbo was hired. Because you lose that game to App State at home, and then obviously all the media is trashing you. Everything gets put under a microscope, including the yell leader situation, Jimbo, the program, everything. And the week felt like it took forever because it was just listening to this stuff over and over, and you're waiting for the next move, you're waiting for the response. And it finally came, and the Aggies won. It wasn't a pretty game, it wasn't a perfect game, but they did enough to win. And if you take a team that needs a lot of work, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and it's a work in progress, obviously this thing's not a finished product at all, but if you can win while figuring things out, that's the best possible position you can be in within the scenario of having a lackluster and developing offense. It felt really good to get some players back this week too. Jalen Jones, probably the star of the game, led the team in tackles. So many clutch, important open field tackles, so much tight coverage, such a physical DB. Great to have him back. He probably played way more than he expected to in his first game of the season, really. Because two guys were knocked out with targeting, one of which was a corner in Brian George, and the other one was your most tenured defensive player and one of your best so far this year in Damani. So Jalen had a huge workload to shoulder, and he came out huge. I'm sure his conditioning wasn't where he wanted it to be. I'm sure he wasn't as crisp as he wanted to be. But damn it if he wasn't really good this game. The whole secondary were the stars of this game. I guess let's just talk about the defense. It was, once again, bend don't break. They gave up almost 400 yards this game. But the key factor was they gave up threes. They did not give up sevens. They literally did not give up sevens. No touchdowns allowed this game. There were some long drives, some long sustained drives by Miami. And Miami did a lot offensively. They're probably not a complete product. If you ask any of their fans, they're probably not satisfied. But A&M did what they had to do with a depleted defense. Let's talk about what the defense was missing this game, and then that'll further highlight how well they played. So you lose Damani and Brian George, two starting DBs, in the first quarter. So we already mentioned that. And then going into the game, obviously there were the suspensions. You lose Smoke Bowie. You lose Denver Harris. Now Denver was a high rotation piece. He was not starting, but he was getting several drives, several snaps per game. So you lose some depth out the gate. Linebackers thin. You're losing Andre White. It's already the thinnest position on this football team, and you're missing Andre White. So you're having to rely on Chris Russell, and I always forget the other guy's name, number 23 and 24, to go and pair with Edgerrin Cooper. So you're shallow at linebacker. Now your DB room is extremely deep, but you're missing so many guys. You're having to rely on youth and less rotation. So the four guys we pretty much saw all night, 4 or 5 guys we saw all night was, of course we had Antonio out there all night. Until the last drive, he actually missed the last drive. Bryce Anderson was out there, true freshman, first real test. Looked great. Tyreek Chappelle, who got banged up at a point in the game, but he ended up coming back in. Who knows what his status is going forward. You had Jalen Jones play almost the whole game. And then you had number 20, Jordan Gilbert. And pretty much minimal rotation out there. Maybe a little bit of Jared Kerr, a couple of guys sprinkled in. But those were your main guys. And they held this offense without a touchdown. If you look at the box score, the top 5 guys, and this is never really a great thing, but when you don't hold them to a touchdown, it can be okay. But the top 5 guys were these DBs in tackles, in all stats. They led the team. So we had to lead with just talking about this defensive back unit. Miami, of course, if you ask any fan, they'll tell you that their receivers are dropping. I mean, they clearly had a lot of drops on the night. That's been an issue of theirs ongoing. and losing their lead receiver before this game obviously hurt them there. But A&M's missing stuff too. That's a part of the game. But A&M was able to tighten up and lock up in the red zone despite giving up these drives and not giving up these huge plays in the passing game. Now, there were some negatives on the defensive side of the ball. With a heavy run team looming in Arkansas, these negatives may come into play yet again next week. D-line didn't get that much of a push, I didn't think. Though there were guys in there working and holding their own, I don't think that you would look at D-line play this game as a massive plus. If anything, it was a slight negative. Minimal quarterback pressure. If there was any pressure this game, it was due to coverage and the quarterback having to hold on to the ball for a long time. Shamar Turner was the best of the D-line bunch. It seemed like if there was pressure, it was Shamar. It seemed like if there was someone running someone down, it was Shamar. Other guys held their own and were able to clog up some holes at times, but there wasn't a whole lot of impact made by individual D linemen this game. Running game for Miami was able to get things going. They have a good running game. I mean, this Parrish guy, Parrish Jr., he's been good all year for them. A&M held them under 100 yards, so that's fine. But they were able to go on some long sustained drives on the back of that running game. Linebacker play is still not a strength for Texas A&M, especially with your starter out and Andre White. You only really have 3 guys in your rotation, so those guys are playing the whole game. They're getting tired, and I've never been of the opinion that 23 or 24 have had they've never really had a strong impact yet. They kind of tend to get lost in the shuffle of the game. They don't really impact guys. Now, Coop is great. Coop made some plays tonight, but it seems like that second level of Texas A&M is not a strength. And with the D-line still a work in progress, I think they'll get it right, but they're still a work in progress. Miami was able to run a bit. Next week, that's going to be a factor because Arkansas is one of the best running teams in the country between KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, and whatever backups they're going to throw in there. The offensive side of the ball was not perfect, and many criticisms will be going towards Jimbo Fisher still for being bland, running the same plays over and over, and not necessarily taking what the defense is giving you at the right time. But it looked way more steady today. It looked way less broken today. I think Max Johnson is the guy. I love, but more than even the way he plays, I love his demeanor, I love his poise, I love his ability to get the team lined up, the team ready to go. It just felt more secure with Max out there today. And Max made some of the passes that he needed to make. There was obviously a lot on the table that didn't happen, but it was his first start ever with this team, and he was missing 2 of his most important targets in Evan Stewart and Chris Marshall this game. But I like Max. I thought it was funny after he scored the touchdown to A-Chain, the swing pass for the run and score. One of his O-linemen threw him up in the air, and then he tried to throw that O-lineman up in the air as if that could ever happen. That was kind of funny. But I'm liking Max. I feel like the team feeds off of him. I just like his demeanor more than Haynes so far. Just seems like more of a vocal and outgoing leader on the field than Haynes did. And I liked his ability to run. I felt like he had a really good gauge of when to run, when to stay in the pocket. And yes, we saw it a couple times. He held onto the ball a little bit long, but he didn't have his best receivers out there, so I haven't seen the film yet. I don't know what happened there. But I like Max. In the second half, late, a few drives stalled. I mean, we kind of got bland with the play calling, I felt. Haven't seen the film yet, but it felt like we were running a lot of the same plays. Still feels like that left side of the O-line is very shaky in the run game, but the right side definitely felt a little short up this game with Bryce getting in there. I mean, Bryce being in there is going to be a godsend. We just need that left side to gain some experience. At the left guard, they were flip-flopping Aki and Moko. So I look for them to battle it out, and I think Moko might be the one that comes out on top of this. Obviously, as I said, haven't watched the film, but I feel like Moko has shown a lot in his couple of games, more than Aki has shown in his larger body of work, because Aki's played quite a few games. But I look for Moko to maybe take over that over the course of the year. The O-line was a little bit better. A-Chain did have some room to run today. He got, I think, 80-plus yards rushing today. There were some holes for A-Chain this game. He got going a little bit, and then he got going on that swing pass in the passing game, got a touchdown. It seems like Anais is going to be that crossing route, short route, catch the ball and go receiver that we always known him to be. He was obviously a favorite target of Max's today. I think he had 4 completions to Anais and a couple to H.A. and then like 1 to a tight end, 1 to Donovan Green. We had a good tight end pass play, and then 1 to Chase Lane. But Anais and H.A. were Max's favorite targets today, and of course that's going to be the case, especially with those other guys out. But you love to see it. You love to see him go to those go-tos. And I mean, that's a great basis for his chemistry ongoing with this team to establish those guys as your comfort zone guys. And then once Evan and Chris get back, they could be maybe more of your home run threat guys. Of course, I always call Evan the do-it-all guy, but he'll have some home run ability. Receivers played okay. I mean, A-Chain and Anais played well in the receiving game, but I didn't see a lot of space between 3 and 2 and their defenders this game. There were some slivers, there were some balls that should have been caught, but overall, you don't see them creating the space that you'd get from 1 and 10. At least in the sample size we saw. Of course, there was a step up in talent level this game, but you look for those guys to come back and him to just keep working with Anais, really, because I don't see a big impact from those other 2 guys. Now, I love Chase Lane as a complementary piece, but when he's your main guy, I don't think that's his best strong suit. I think he's more of a safety valve guy, a reliable guy. But you really miss those threats to make big plays, to complement what Anais and A-Chain can do for you in the pass game, and the tight end if he gets more involved, which we should hope for. Getting Max right back was huge. You get your second tight end. They're running a lot of Max and Donovan Green. I feel like Donovan's improving as a blocker. I'm kind of liking him in the blocking game. He does look a little, green out there at times. Ha! No pun intended. But I like him and Max in that 2 tight end set, getting the blocking going. I look for that to be a point of emphasis, an area that can flourish over the year would be that 2 tight end set with those 2 guys. I liked a little bit of what I saw from that. It just felt like there were more lanes to run, especially early in this game and in the third quarter. But can they put a whole game together of consistent offensive play? This was the first real game where we saw a full game of offense, because in that first game you had the weather delay, starters rested the 4th, and then in the second game you had 38 plays run on offense. So I kind of am thinking about this. This is a positive outlook, obviously, but as a fresh start to this offense, you get your new quarterback, you get your first full test run with this offense. I say test run, but it was a live action. These were live rounds we were playing with. It was a losable game. But they did a full workload, and I kind of look at this as like the starting point for this offense. And you don't even have your full, arsenal yet. So I look for the next week and the next week when we start getting some guys back at the receiving core for this offense to take the next steps. I think Jimbo's play calling will improve over the year, because as we've seen with Jimbo before in these big games, he starts to unleash the playbook a little bit more. I'm sorry, but Jimbo was holding stuff back before this game, and I don't think that was a smart move. But we saw more running backs get involved this game. We saw the goal line lineup where we went to a true eye, and there was a fullback. I think it was Crownover that played fullback, and then LJ played power back. And that was good. We got a different look because A-Chain is not that guy. He's not that guy, pal. He's not going to be the power back. He has great strong suits, but that's not one of them. So it's great to see LJ get involved there. We saw a little bit of Amari Daniels, didn't get too much of a look. I think he had 3 carries on the night. But it's good to get that rotation going, because with the kind of threat that A-Chain is, you don't need to be pounding him up the middle all game. You need to pick your shots with him. Choose when and how you're going to use him, and put him in the best opportunities to break those big ones or break those gashing plays, because that's what he does. That's where he's best. So if you get that complementary group in there, you're going to be able to chip away and then find the slots that you're going to want to put him in at, find the looks you want to put him in at, and get him some rest and let him go in when he's fully gassed up and fresh. So that was a great, encouraging sign that I wish they had been doing kind of the whole year. The 2 tight end set wasn't really doable the first 2 games when you only really had one experienced guy. We saw them put Big Crownover in there, and I don't think it was working out too well earlier in the year. But it was just great to have Max to be that second blocking tight end out there. That's really what Jimbo likes to do, is mix in that 2 tight end set and get the running game going. So I look at it as a fresh start, and I look at it as a positive sign for things to move forward with. I really hope this isn't what we're going to see all year and there's no upward trajectory, but I feel like A&M has a lot, and more than most teams, and maybe that's just because of where they are now, which is kind of down here, but they have a lot of room to grow offensively this year, especially with them getting players back. I mean, Bryce Foster's back, Max Wright's back, and then finally, hopefully next week, the suspension is lifted and you get 2 of your main receivers back, and then you get your full offense with your true QB1. So I look for A&M to have a ton of room to grow. Arkansas is on deck. Arkansas has been shaky this year. They have not been that dominant force that I and many expected them to be. They were matched or borderline outplayed by Cincinnati in a win at home, but Cincinnati went and almost lost to some school, I don't remember, Miami of Ohio today, and then Arkansas almost lost to Missouri State. And I know A&M lost to App State, so I'm not using this as a dig, but there's some vulnerability in this Arkansas defense that is battered and broken. They're missing a lot of secondary players, including Catalan, and I don't think they're going to be getting them back anytime soon. So there's some opportunities for this offense to continue growing next week. This run game defense that we saw a little bit of holes in against Miami, I look for that to be shored up a lot this week versus Arkansas, because if it's not, Arkansas is going to run all over Texas A&M. I look for less 3-down linemen against Arkansas. I hope that's the case. There were a lot of 5-in-the-box looks, and I get it. Miami, late in the game, they're trying to pass to conserve clock and move the ball down the field. But throughout the game, we saw a lot of 3-down linemen on the D-line, and I don't think I like that with what A&M has to offer on that in that D-line pool of talent. So I look for A&M to load the box up a little bit more this week against Arkansas. I'll do another video this week talking about what I hope changes a little bit more specifically after I watch the film. But I'm very encouraged. It wasn't a pretty game. It wasn't a perfect game. But the season's back on track. You control your own destiny still. You feel better after that loss because you got your ranked win at home. You don't come back for a month, so it's time to go do some things on the road and kind of uncharted grounds for this year's iteration of the team, because you're doing it 4 or 5 weeks in a row, not including a bye. How are they going to look on the road or at a neutral site, not at Kyle Field? So a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to come together over these next few weeks away from home. And I look for them to improve because, as I've said, this offense has so much room to get better, and this D-line has so much room to grow because it's so young in so many regards. We're seeing a lot of Anthony Lucas, a lot of Shamar Stewart, a lot of young guys playing. Shamar Turner, Adelier and Diggs are both young and experienced. So there's a lot of room to grow everywhere. And I look for this team to grow on the run, improve throughout the year, and if you can do that while winning ball games, you're in the best possible spot with where we're at right now. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Like and subscribe if you can. I appreciate you guys. Gig 'em.